Hi, welcome to Peg Talk, sponsored by Founded on Truth. I'm your host, Peg Luksik, and in the next 30 minutes or so, we are going to be exploring the issues of the day using a factual approach. There won't be any hyperbole, and whenever possible, I'm going to give you the actual documents so that you can see what I saw when I got the information that I'm about to share with you. And now, without further ado, let us begin. The Declaration of Independence was signed in 1776. The Constitution was signed in 1787. That leaves 11 years in the middle. Something happened in those 11 years. It's the part of American history that nobody really talks about, but in fact, we did have a government in those 11 years. That government was created by what were called the Articles of Confederation. The timeline when the resolution to remove ourselves from England was introduced in the Continental Congress. In that same month, in June of 1776, the Congress appointed a committee to begin to develop a system of government for the colonies. By the middle of July, that committee had a draft of articles ready for the Continental Congress to look at. By November of 1777, the articles were finished and submitted to the states for ratification, and by 1781, they were signed and ratified in all 13 states, which meant that the Articles of Confederation became the governing document of this brand new country called the United States of America. Well, what did the Articles of Confederation say? Well, the first thing that they did was create the name United States of America. Though that name was actually created legally by the Articles of Confederation. The second thing it did was established state sovereignty. It said that the states were entering into a firm league of friendship for the welfare of all. And it said that every state would recognize the transactions of every other state. It was the commerce section that continues in effect even under our present Constitution. It created Congress. Now, the original Congress only had one chamber. They met on the first Monday in November. There was one vote per state. The state could have 2 to 7 delegates, but whatever those delegates decided internally, the state as a body got one vote in the Congress. The delegates were appointed by the state and could be recalled at any time by the state. The state had to pay all of the expenses for the delegates that it sent. Delegates had term limits, and no pay was allowed for the delegates. It said that the states were barred from creating treaties or declaring war by themselves, that there would be no titles of nobility in the United States, and that the states would maintain militias and armaments, all of the supplies that would be necessary for national defense, but that they would be maintained inside and by each individual state. It said Army officers below the rank of general were appointed by the state. It's why if you ever watched a movie about even the Civil War, it was the Massachusetts Regiment or the Pennsylvania Brigade, because the states, all of the militias were loyal to the state, and the states appointed the officers, anything below the rank of general. The expenses for the United States would be paid through an apportionment among the states based on the property and the population of each state, and that how each state would pay its apportionment would be determined by the legislature of that state. It said that Congress had the power to declare war and create alliances and sign treaties and settle disputes among the states. Congress was the court that the states would come to if they wanted their disputes settled. It said that Congress could coin money and set postage rates and appoint generals for the Army and build and manage the Navy. The Navy always belonged to the national government. It said that they would create a committee to function while Congress was in research, and that committee would choose a president who would serve for a 1-year term and could serve 1 year out of every 3 years. So you couldn't serve consecutively. It said that Congress could borrow money and could spend money. It forbade the national government from exerting eminent domain claims upon any state. It set voting requirements for congressional action. It said that how the states would supply troops for national defense would be based on the population of that state. And it said that Congress couldn't adjourn for more than 6 months at a time, and that Congress had to publish transcripts of all of its proceedings. It granted the committee of the states the power to act as Congress while Congress was in research. It allowed Canada to be admitted to the Union if it chose to do so. It acknowledged any debt that was incurred by Congress as a legitimate debt of the country, and it asserted the primacy of the Articles of Confederation and provided a mechanism for changing them, but it said that mechanism would require unanimous agreement among the states in order to change the Articles of Confederation. So the Articles went into effect, all of the states ratified them, and the Articles went into full effect in 1781. And remember, there was a committee that was appointed to serve while Congress was in recess, and then that committee chose a president. So the first president that they chose, who used the term President of the United States in Congress assembled, was chosen in November of 1781. His name was John Hanson. Mr. Hanson was a merchant from Maryland. He was a member of the Continental Congress from 1779 on. He was unanimously elected the first president under the Articles of Confederation. Even George Washington voted for him. He created the Great Seal of the United States. When the president goes out to speak, there's a seal that is in front of him. It was created under the administration of Mr. Hanson, and it has not been changed from that day to this. He removed all foreign troops from American soil, as well as their flags. He kept the American troops from rebelling at the end of the war because they hadn't been paid. Congress didn't have any money, and there was a full-scale attempt at a revolution, and every other member of the Continental Congress left town. And Mr. Hanson was left alone holding the bag, and he worked with those troops to get them to go home and work out a system to pay them. He created the Treasury Department. He appointed the first Secretary of War. He created the first Foreign Affairs Department. He guaranteed statehood for the Western territories beyond the Appalachian Mountains, and he established that the fourth Thursday in every November would be Thanksgiving Day, which of course we still celebrate that way. When his term was up, he was succeeded by Elias Boudinot. Mr. Boudinot was born in Pennsylvania. He was a lawyer. He's the gentleman, the President of Congress, the President of the United States in Congress assembled, who signed the Treaty of Paris, which is the treaty that ended the Revolutionary War. Mr. Boudinot was succeeded by Thomas Mifflin. He was from Pennsylvania. He was actually the first quartermaster general of the Continental Army serving under George Washington. He accepted the commission upon his resignation in December. He was the first American president recognized as such by Great Britain. He was the one who appointed Thomas Jefferson as minister to France, and he appointed the commander of the first American regiment, because remember, General Washington had resigned by that point. He was succeeded by Richard Henry Lee. We remember Mr. Lee. He's the one that made the resolution in the Continental Congress in June of 1776 that set the ball in motion and led to the creation, first of the Declaration of Independence and then of the Continental Congress. He was from Virginia, and under his administration, the Land Ordinance of 1785 was passed, in which the states relinquished their claims to the Northwest Territory, and he created the modern United States survey system. So you can see quite a bit has been being done, even under the Articles in these very first years of the Continental Congress. He was succeeded by John Hancock. Now, we remember Mr. Hancock was the gentleman who signed the Declaration of Independence and joked that for a while his signature was the only one on it, and he wrote it large enough that King George could see it without his glasses. Mr. Hancock was a businessman from Massachusetts. He never attended a single session of the Continental Congress under the Articles of Confederation, and because of his poor health, he resigned early from the post. He was succeeded by Nathaniel Gorham, who was also from Massachusetts. He was the president during Shays' Rebellion in Massachusetts and negotiated some of the settlement of the rebellion at that time. He was succeeded by Arthur St. Clair. He was actually born in Scotland, settled in Pennsylvania, finished the resolution of Shays' Rebellion. Under Mr. St. Clair, the Northwest Ordinance was passed, and the Philadelphia Convention to draft a new constitution was held, because by the time that Mr. St. Clair came into office, which was only 6 years after the Articles had been finally ratified by all the states, it was becoming increasingly apparent that the Articles were having some serious problems. And so the Continental Congress actually came together to say, we need to change the form of government. And that change led to the creation of the Philadelphia Convention to draft a new constitution. The next president under the Articles was Cyrus Griffin. He was a judge from Virginia. He enacted the resolution so that we could move from the Articles to the new Constitution. In a way, the America that we know is the second American Republic. The first one, the one that existed under the Articles of Confederation, only lasted for about 6-7 years from its institution until its dissolution. And it was a absolutely seamless and peaceful transition of power. But at each step, the Continental Congress, the Congress of the United States assembled, had to unanimously vote to approve each step of moving from the Articles of Confederation to the U.S. Constitution. And Cyrus Griffin was the president when they passed the resolution to begin renovating Federal Hall in New York so that the new federal government could take offices there. He was president during the last official action under the Articles of Confederation, and he remained president until his term officially ended and the term of the new president began, even though Congress did not meet during that time, so that there would never be a minute during which the United States would not have a working government. The problems with the Articles? Well, there was no executive branch. There was no way to implement and enforce the laws. There was no judicial branch to interpret the laws. Everything had to go to Congress in order to be resolved, and every dispute that arose, Congress, which did not meet, often had to somehow deal with. Congress could only ever ask the states to comply with the laws. In the Articles, at no point was there an enforcement mechanism. So Congress could ask the states to pay their apportioned levy, but if the states said no, Congress was stuck. Congress could ask the states to participate in national defense, but if the states said no, Congress was stuck. Congress, therefore, was in a position where they could declare war, but they couldn't raise an army. They had to go back and ask the states to supply troops and armaments, which, if you can't raise an army, makes it rather a useless gesture to give someone the power to declare war. No actions in Congress were possible without a quorum, but the states didn't always send delegates. Remember, the states had to pay for the upkeep of their delegates. They had to pay all the expenses of their delegates. Sometimes the states didn't want to pay the money. Sometimes the states looked at, well, what's on the agenda for this Congress? Oh, I don't like that agenda. We'll keep our people home. And if enough states kept their people home, Congress could not take an action. So it was a way for the states to keep Congress from acting just by not sending anybody, which effectively ground the federal government to a halt. Congress always had to ask the states for money, but they had no way to compel the states to give it, and they had no independent mechanism to raise money themselves, which led to the rebellion of the troops and led to things like Shays' Rebellion, because Congress couldn't pay its bills. If you remember, the Declaration of Independence said, "It is the right of the people to alter or abolish a government that wasn't working, and to institute a new government, laying its foundation on the principles and organizing its powers in a form that will most give them the ability to protect safety, liberty, and happiness." In the actions around the Articles of Confederation, the United States of America lived out the words of the Declaration of Independence in an orderly, efficient, and bloodless fashion, Power moved not just from one administration to another administration, but from one complete form of government to another complete form of government. In effect, we abolished the government that was given to us by the Articles of Confederation and instituted a new government defined by the United States Constitution. Because in the judgment of the elected officials at that time, the new government would be more effective in securing the safety and happiness of the people. The Declaration of Independence is not just empty words. In the United States, we have actually lived out every piece of the principles that it stated. And we did actually abolish a government and establish a new one that was better able to secure the rights given to us by our Creator. The Declaration of Independence is not just a document. It is the founding structure upon which this country is organized. And we proved it by moving from the Articles to the Constitution in the way that we did. Thank you so much for joining us. I hope to see you next time when we will talk about how the Constitution was a better mechanism for securing the rights endowed to us by our Creator. Until then, I hope you visit us at Founded on Truth and take advantage of the resources there. If you've missed any of these programs, they are available in our YouTube segment, so you can go back and look at any of the earlier programs. And do take advantage of some of the resources that we have for you, including our book on helping parents to choose a reading curriculum for their children, Love Mom, which is a book about the wonders of parenthood, a Mirror Image, which talks about the why and how every life is sacred, and why we need a country that recognizes that most fundamental of our endowed rights. And until next week, thank you so much, and may the good Lord hold you in the palm of his hand.